Bill Maher is back after a month off the air, and he wasted no time mocking Donald Trump, calling out MAGA lies, and specifically Trump stooge and Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw, who was pushing not only lies about the 2020 election, but trying to create this ridiculous false equivalency of Democrats pointing out the actual election interference that happened in 2016 with Donald Trump and his violent assault on the Capitol that he incited on January 6th. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. But thankfully, of course, Bill Maher was there to shut it down. And I want to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video and hit the subscribe button. It really goes a long way in supporting this new and growing channel and really means the world to me. And now, before we get into Bill Maher's takedown of those MAGA lies, I want to hear a little bit of what he had to say after a month off about Donald Trump.
And so shit, now she's leading in the poll. Ever since Kamala took over in the polls, I mean, Trump has been petty and vindictive and lying and whining, so no change.
Donald Trump right now is unraveling, unwinding. He is saying unexpected things in every rally and speech he delivers. But the one thing that we always can expect from Donald Trump is complaints, is the whining, is the woe is me. Donald Trump so insecure and so full of grievance. That's what his entire political career has really been about. It's been about complaining. And it used to be that Donald Trump was pretending to be complaining on behalf of working people. Of course, that was never true. But now the complaints are only about Donald Trump and the vengeance that he has. And it seems like the only time that there's ever positivity in Donald Trump's campaign, the only time he ever speaks highly of anyone is of dictators, is of the worst people in the world. And Bill Maher called out Dan Crenshaw for defending Donald Trump's praise of Putin right here.
That opinion, which I agree with, is out of step with your own party.
It's about half and half. I mean,
Really?
You can see it in our votes, yeah. I mean, it's an ongoing discussion. And Trump, by the way, has never ran away from it. Trump has always said, first of all, he threatened Putin when he was in office. He said, look, we're going to
With what, a kiss?
Donald Trump always brags about how much dictators like him, which I don't know why that's something to brag about. But Donald, it's because you suck up to them. It's because you were writing love letters to Kim Jong-un. We have all seen the famous photo with Donald Trump holding his head down as Vladimir Putin smiled, walking ahead of him. We know that you're just a puppet, Donald, so we don't even want to hear any of what Dan Crenshaw has to say, and especially we don't want to hear his lies about the 2020 election and the false equivalencies he was trying to push. And like I said at the beginning of this video, in doing so, he was immediately called out by Bill Maher in just such an incredible takedown, and I want to check that out.
But he hasn't conceded losing that last election. My point to you, sir, is that gas prices and food prices go up and down. But this shit is forever.
Okay. Don't take my word for Biden policies being responsible for inflation. You can just ask the Fed and their statements in 2022.
That's not the question I'm asking.
It was all on fiscal stimulus, which was the American Rescue Plan.
But I'm saying that stuff, that's the normal stuff of politics and economics. It goes up and down. But not normal. But wait, but wouldn't you concede that not conceding elections is a much bigger, more existential issue, and that he's not going to concede this election? Can you imagine, can you tell me a scenario where he loses, maybe even by more, and he concedes the election? Can you imagine him saying, I've seen the results, and I'd like to congratulate Kamala Harris on running a good campaign? It's impossible to imagine.
I don't have to imagine. I don't have to imagine any of it because I know the history of it, and the history of it is he moved out of the White House. There was a peaceful transition of power, and there was an inauguration on January 21st.
He tried everything not to do that.
They tried to do the same unconstitutional process that Democrats did in the last three elections and Republicans
won. The Democrats sent fake electors. The Democrats pressured the Justice Department. The Democrats went to court and got laughed out of it. No, that never happened in any other election.
You're talking about utilizing the legal process. Now, I disagree with the fact that there should even be a process to decertify an election, but Democrats did it 3 times in the elections prior to that. Where was the hand-wringing then? Stacey Abrams has never said that she lost the governor's race in Georgia.
And that's
wrong. Nobody wrings their hands about it.
That's wrong, and it's a false equivalency to sending fake electors.
What do you mean fake electors? What fake electors?
Absolutely shutting down the MAGA lies. And as we now know, Donald Trump did interfere with the 2016 election by killing stories and paying hush money to Stormy Daniels so that the voters could not find out that he was having an affair with a porn star while his third wife was pregnant. And I don't think Republican voters would really have considered that super family values in 2016. We know now that MAGA is a cult, but back then it wasn't as much so. And so could that have possibly swayed the election? We don't know. It's very much a possibility. And so Donald Trump did interfere with the 2016 election. We know that to be true. A jury of his peers found him guilty of doing so. So I don't want to hear any of these comparisons, especially from a MAGA Republican. And it wasn't just Bill Maher who called him out. Caitlin Collins also did. A little bit of a shock that CNN's Caitlin Collins was calling out a MAGA Republican. Doesn't always happen on her show, so I'm glad it's happening now. But she said this.
To act like what Democrats have done before, which is often something that Republicans, when we have them on my show, say when we talk about January 6th and the fake electors and Trump refusing to admit that he lost the election, there was barely a peaceful transfer of power. They actually wouldn't even allow them to move forward with getting federal funding to start the transition for weeks. I remember it was because we found out about a little-known position that no one in the federal government even really knew much about because of that. But also, the difference then is Joe Biden went and certified the election. He was the vice president then, and he certified Donald Trump's election and
so did Mike
there
Pence.
was not a massive.
Because
Mike Pence was pressured not to by Donald Trump.
And so it's just a ridiculous attack. And the Stacey Abrams attack is as well. Caitlin Collins herself was actually called out by Stacey Abrams for saying that. So it's a good thing that she changed her tune, pointing out the work that Republicans do to try to deprive Americans of their voice and of their vote is not denying elections. It's saying that we need to work to make elections more available to all Americans. And I just think it's ridiculous that we would see any pushback on that. But of course, that is MAGA. And MAGA is something that Bill Maher was mocking J.D. Vance for in this clip right here.
So the biggest threat to America now is not a nuclear-armed Iran or $35 trillion in debt or another leaky lab in China. It's cat ladies. Vance says the country is being run by them. In 2020, he said not having kids makes people more sociopathic and less mentally stable, and the people who are most deranged and most psychotic are people who don't have kids. Have you met your running mate? He's got 5 kids, and he's out of his mind. And again, it's 2024.
Yeah, I do think J.D. Vance, someone who has criticized his now boss, I guess, his running mate. I don't know if that's still going to continue. It seems like at this point it will. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if there was a last-minute switcheroo of J.D. Vance for someone else because he has been so damaging to Donald Trump's campaign. But as Bill Maher was kind of mocking Donald Trump for, it was Don's own son, Don Jr., who pushed him to select J.D. Vance. So maybe tying that point together very nicely for Bill Maher with the great blow that he landed on Donald Trump there. But I think it's also important to revisit a little bit of what Dan Crenshaw had to say, trying to make this point that actually Donald Trump's presidency was good. I know he's a Trump stooge, but gosh, man, I don't know what metrics you would try to use. And he actually was shut down for that, again, surprisingly by Caitlin Collins, but I want to watch that clip and talk about it.
The list keeps going. Taxes were lower under Trump. They raised them under Biden Harris. Regulations were lower under Trump. They raised them under Biden and Harris. Immigration numbers way down. They actually tried to stop the problem. Record numbers under Biden and Harris. This is a very easy debate to win because on the metrics, it's very easy to show side by side.
Okay,
but that's what his campaign wants him to say. But Donald Trump it's not a campaign where you just give him his talking points and he goes out there and delivers them. Yeah. I mean, Donald Trump is his own biggest impediment. His own campaign will tell you that. I mean, he's questioning whether or not her race and whether or not she's actually black at an event with black journalists. It's stuff like that his campaign is, watching in real time and knowing he's their own biggest liability.
If I remember the end of Donald Trump's presidency, it was economic disaster. We were still in the throes of COVID, a pandemic, in response that Donald Trump completely mismanaged. So no, Dan, I don't think that we can make the argument that it was better, the economy or any aspect of our country was better under Donald Trump. When the Biden economy is booming, the stock market is surging, and we are seeing historic job growth, investment in manufacturing, investments in American infrastructure. I don't know what comparison you're trying to make, but what was true is Caitlin Collins making the point of, yes, Trump is his own worst enemy. Always. So I encourage Donald Trump and these Trump stooges who only remind us of how poorly Donald Trump was as president to keep talking. Please. It's always great to remind the American people how much of a failure Donald Trump was, because that's what he was, an abject failure. And as much as you say, Dan, that it's a debate, it's really not. And that is why I am so looking forward to the actual debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, which I still don't really think Donald Trump is going to show up for. Seems pretty scared already, but we will see, and we will certainly be covering it on this channel. So if you want to stay up to date on all of that, make sure that you hit that subscribe button, that you leave a like, and if you stuck around to the end, make sure to drop blue heart in the comments so I can thank you for your support, because it really does mean a lot to me. And until next time, I'll see you soon.